Hello and welcome to the MBOM podcast, where you will learn to master the business of yoga with guests from around the world who have experienced becoming successful yoga teachers, studio owners, and much more. Now, here's your host, Amanda Kingsmith.
Hey everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the MBOM podcast. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Yoga Boss Babe. If you haven't listened to the podcast episode where I talked with Yoga Boss Babe founder Liz Nguyen, go back a couple of episodes and make sure you listen to it. It'll help you understand all about why she created Yoga Boss Babe, what it's all about, and so much more. In the meantime, Yoga Boss Babe is a monthly lifestyle subscription box for passionate and motivated female yoga entrepreneurs who want to build and grow their yoga business. Each month, you receive a box of goodies to keep you on track and feeling inspired with your business. You get things like a brand new journal to write your sequences in, a candle for your self-care, a brand new tea to try out, again for self-care, access to workshops, and so much more. For more information, please visit www.yogabossbabe.com and use promo code MBOM15 to get 15% off your first box. This episode is also brought to you by Fave Yogis. If you guys have been listening to this season of the podcast, you'd know that Fave Yogis has been sponsoring the podcast for a number of episodes now. If you haven't headed over to your app store and downloaded Fave Yogis yet, do yourself a favor and go get it. It's the newest yoga app designed specifically with yogis and yoga teachers in mind. It was built out of Santa Monica, California by a practicing yogi who recognized that they needed something more out of their yoga practice. Fave Yogis connects yoga students with their favorite teachers through a simple to use app that is free to download. Teachers can post one-time events like workshops and retreats as well as their regular weekly classes. And then students can easily find teachers' offerings from anywhere in the world. Head on over to your app store, download Fave Yogis, FAVYOGIS, and use code MBOM when you sign up and make sure they know I sent you. All right, guys, on to today's episode of the podcast. I am very excited to have a unique episode that's different to most of the regular episodes that we do. I'm joined by yoga teacher and writer Gregory Ormson. Gregory is joining me all the way from Arizona, and he's here to talk about a really, really niche program that he runs. So something we talk about in the podcast quite often, as well as in my private Facebook community, Yoga Business Badasses, is how important it is to find a really specific niche or target market. So looking at the things that you really love in your life and being able to either combine them or integrate them with yoga. And Gregory has done just that. Not only is he a passionate yoga student, but he's also a passionate yoga teacher. And he also rides Harley Davidson motorcycles. And he's been doing both of these things, yoga and riding motorcycles, for a number of years now. And this past year, he got the idea to combine the two. He looked at a market that could really use yoga for a number of different reasons and decided to reach out and see if there's any way to offer yoga. Instead of looking into hosting yoga classes in a regular classroom yoga studio setting where you would not normally see your average motorcycle rider, he looked into taking the practice of yoga to motorcyclists. So I don't want to spoil exactly what he's done and how he's done it, but it is a really, really incredible story. And I think there's a lot to learn from Gregory's experience. So without further ado, here is Gregory Ormson on offering yoga to motorcyclists. I'm very excited to be joined on the podcast today by Gregory Ormson, who is joining me all the way from Arizona. Welcome to the podcast today, Gregory.
Thank you, Amanda. And I know you're all the way down in Mexico City these days.
Yeah, we're both enjoying the warm weather, which is nice.
Good.
And so we've got a bit of a unique episode today, which I'm super excited about. You do a yoga and leather program, which is yoga for bikers, that's run out of a Harley Davidson in Arizona. And I want to dive into all about that, but I wanted to back up a little bit and talk about how you first got into yoga. Can you share that with me?
Sure. And, listening from your podcast, that's really an interesting part of your broadcast is how people get into it. And with me, I first saw yoga in 1979 when I was traveling in India with a music group. And I saw a man on the lawn doing a really effective version of ego pose. And I thought, what is wrong with that guy? I was 20 years old, leading a small group. And I thought he was sick or deformed. And I simply did not cognate what was happening there. And this was right out of college. Then after that, it took many, many years before I even tried yoga. It was in Hawaii in 2012. Like many athletes in the past, if you've been an athlete, you've also been injured. So I had a share of injuries growing up from baseball and weightlifting and gymnastics and everything else. But the worst one was falling from a roof in Michigan after I was chopping some ice, and you might know about that in Canada, from the gutters up on the roof, right?
Yeah, never done it personally, but I've seen my dad do it.
Oh, it's horrible. And then if you happen to slip, the ladder slips out from under you, and you come down and land on the ladder from the roof, you could end up with a bad back. That's what happened to me, and I was in Hawaii then, many years later. Moving furniture into a second floor apartment, and the next day I was on the wooden floor in pain. I could not move. My back was so sore and so bad that my motorcycle riding was entirely compromised. And I said, at the time, I said that to my partner, I said, man, I've got to find a way to fix this back, or I'm going to be an old man as a young man. And I started noticing yoga signs everywhere in Hawaii. And I thought, well, what if I got to lose? I went to a yoga club, and it was hard, but I did it. And I went back again. Finally, the owner comes up to me and he says, it happened to be, I happened to start with Bikram yoga, hot yoga in Hawaii, so I was hot all the time.
Yeah, that's pretty intense.
In Kona, Hawaii. And he came up to me and said, Greg, why don't you do the challenge? He said, well, what's the challenge? I'd never done yoga before. He said, 30 days, do as many classes as you possibly can. And I said, well, okay, I'll try it. I did 24 out of 30, and at the end of that month, my back felt really good, and I thought, maybe there is something to this. That was 6 years ago, and I've been doing it devotionally and regularly ever since.
That's amazing. I love hearing those stories, especially, coming to a place of it from injury and your body feeling a lot better when you do the practice. And it's always as a yoga teacher, I just love hearing that. So that's really cool.
Isn't it true that we hear that story over and over and over from people? It's quite amazing. Yeah.
I feel like it's either injuries or maybe stressful corporate jobs. But it always comes from a place of not being in a great physical or mental sphere, and yoga seems to really help with that. So it's always nice to hear. Yeah. And so at what point did you decide that you wanted to share the practice that you wanted to teach?
Well, my career was as a teacher for many, many years. I taught college, and I did some campus work and a number of other things. So people would frequently say, well, what, are you going to teach, Greg? And I really didn't want to, because I was enjoying just doing it so much. I really liked going and being led and doing the best I could as a follower. But over time, I thought more and more about teaching, and I had written a text on yoga as well. And my agent in San Francisco pitched it for a year, and nobody took it. And she said to me finally, Greg, maybe if you have your credential, a teaching credential, along with your other credentials, somebody might pick it, and maybe you could redo it again, try another angle in your book. So I've been doing that this last 7 or 8 months regularly. And I picked up my credential this summer, and have now been teaching at a fitness place. I started the thing at the Superstition Harley Davidson here in Apache Junction for yoga for riders, yoga and leather. And I've got a senior center here in Apache Junction that wants me to start in December. And I substitute at studios in the area, a couple studios I go to. And I'm doing some workshops in January. So this happened rather fast, the teaching thing. But in a way, I felt like I was prepared from many, many years teaching. And the whole philosophy of yoga as well, I think, ties into my philosophy of teaching, because I really believe it's not about me. It's not about me at all. Teaching is never about the teacher. It's always about the people. So I do my best as a teacher to manage the classroom, to handle the sequencing, the lessons, to put the niyamas in place, the observances, don't get off your mat, things like that. But that's my job. Their job is to do it, and I let them do it and hope that whatever they do, it's the best for them. But it's not about me, it's about them, and it's their investment. So I'm pretty clear about that in my head. And therefore, teaching is, for me, it's a joy, it's fun, and I'm going to keep doing it as long as I can.
Yeah, that's amazing. It sounds like, coming from this background of teaching, it was a really natural transition to go from just simply being a practitioner to being able to offer your love of yoga as a teacher.
Yeah, well, thank you, man. I think so, and I hope so, and I'm kind of getting the feeling that it's true from others, but I don't presume to know anything for sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. It's always hard to know. One of the things I learned early on in my yoga teaching career was to not look at people's faces during the class for feedback because they're so focused on whatever's going on in their body. If you look at them, you're probably going to think you're the worst teacher ever.
You're going to think they hate you. Well, that's good.
Totally, yeah. Good. And I also translate that into my own practice because I feel like I have that same stare. So now I try to smile. If the teacher looks at me, I smile. It's like, you're doing a great job. I'm just I'm just having my moment over here.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And it's funny because I shared this with my class just the other day, the strange way that life sends us and moves us in these circles and corners that we would never expect. But when I was growing up in high school, I went to college, and I thought originally of being a Phi Ed teacher. I loved athletics, played baseball, played high school and college. And that was really my interest. I loved weightlifting. I loved doing gymnastics. I was very active. I remember my dad sat down with me one time and he said, you can't go and be a Phi Ed teacher because when you're 40 years old, you won't be able to do push-ups anymore and your career will be over. And I didn't quite believe it, but I thought, well, I'm not 40 yet. Maybe he's right. I don't know. So I never went that route. But then I was in my class the other day and we were doing a fairly strenuous pose or something, and I was teaching and sharing with them and getting up and walking around looking at them. And I shared that story and I said, my dad, peace be with you, dear departed father, but you didn't know what you're talking about. Because you wouldn't believe this now, man. You would not believe this.
Oh, that's so amazing, though. I mean, when you're young, it's really hard because you really don't have perspective on what it's like to be an older person. You just know what people tell you.
And I trust.
Yeah, you trust your parents.
I trusted him, and he knew.
Yeah, I feel like that's what we do as young people. It's a really natural tendency, but it's so amazing that you're in a position now where you're obviously able to move your body quite well.
Yeah, my father would be surprised. Dad, I'm way past 40 and I'm still doing this. What do you think?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I'm in my late 20s now, and I just think about, my parents kind of make comments like that sometimes, oh, you aren't going to be able to do those headstands you do forever, and you're not going to be able to do handstands, and, your feet are going to start aching and your hips are going to ache, and they kind of, throw those things at me being in their mid 50s. And I'm just you know what? I'm putting in the work now. I'm going to take care of my body, and I'm just going to trust in the process that I'm still going to feel good when I'm older.
Well, yeah, I think you've got the right idea. I mean, both of us have heard, I'm sure, of yogis and yoginis in their 90s, even 100, doing all of that. So,
mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. It's super inspiring.
It is very inspiring. Yes.
Amazing. So how long have you been riding motorcycles for?
There's another one of those stories where when I was young, one of my parents said no way because I was, aggressive and assertive, and they knew that I was a high energy kid and probably would be badly injured or dead if I had a motorcycle. They said no. Then I went to college. I came back at 19 years old, I think, and here my younger brother had a motorcycle. He was 17. And that made me so mad. How come he got one and I never got one? So I asked him if I could take it for a little trip, and he said, sure. I got on the motorcycle, and I thought, well, this is nothing, riding a motorcycle. Took off, and I came to the second curve, I think, and it said 25 miles an hour, and I thought, well, that's easy. I can take it 35 on a motorcycle. And I started whipping around this curve and put it right into the ditch. I landed in the sumacs and the berries and the trees, twisted the bike up, wrecked the the brake lever, the mirrors.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I know. I got it back to my brother, and I said, man, I'm sorry. I'll never ask you to ride your motorcycle again. I'll pay for the repairs. I'll pay for the repairs. Sorry, really sorry. And I did. And it was 25 years after that when I finally got my first motorcycle. I was 46. And I guess my parents were right. I probably would have hurt myself very badly. But by the time I was 46, I had 3 children, a little bit more settled, a little bit, certainly more aware of safety. And I bought a large Harley Davidson motorcycle in 2000. I've been riding ever since.
That's amazing.
And then on top of that, I took the course to become a certified motorcycle safety instructor. So I taught in Hawaii for a while how young people how to ride motorcycles. And I tried to tell them, like every teacher does, don't do what I did. Which probably went nowhere, but we try anyway.
Yeah, I feel like when we're young, we really have to learn for ourselves, but I feel like it doesn't hurt to give those lessons. You learned it, you might as well share it with somebody.
Yeah, I guess maybe it makes us feel less responsible or something. I'm not sure what it does, but we have to learn the hard way, right?
Definitely.
Seems like it.
And so you've been riding motorcycles for a number of years now. You've been practicing yoga for a number of years. When did you first get the idea to combine riding motorcycles with yoga?
I think, Amanda, I was on the motorcycle one day and I was feeling, I know what it was. I was doing a U-turn on the motorcycle. Now, I'm not a real huge guy, okay? I'm not that tall, and I'm only 175 pounds. I've got a big motorcycle. So what I need is not the strength, but the balance in order to handle this large Road King or the Heritage Softail motorcycles. Well, I came to a U-turn one day, and I flipped it off the easiest I'd ever done so. And this was after doing yoga for about 2 years. And I thought, what just happened? How come I did that U-turn so absolutely easily? And here I'd been a teacher and everything else. And it suddenly dawned on me that I was so relaxed on the motorcycle going into the turn that it just became a piece of cake. And many times in motorcycling, and I hear this a lot from cyclists, oh, I can't do a right turn, or I get really nervous when I've got to do a U-turn, or something along that line. They're already putting their mind ahead of the body into the turn and creating stress, therefore making it more difficult. And I learned it, I taught myself, I didn't really teach myself, I guess it was by feedback, self-feedback, like, wow, what just happened there? It was so easy. And then I realized my yoga is absolutely affecting my motorcycle riding. And then I started thinking more about it, and I started thinking of the parallels. And there are so many, from the clarity of thought, to the relaxation, to the balance, to the adaptability. All of this is so important for riding, for being cool on the road and being able to turn your neck to the left and to the right, your blind spot. And then I went to the DMV to get my license renewed, and I remember the guy saying, people don't get their license removed. It's not because they can't drive or see, it's because they can't turn their neck to the side and see the blind spot. And I thought, wow, there we go. Mm-hmm. So this huge artery in our neck, the sternocleidomastoid, I think it's called, that turns us left and right and then flexes our neck down, brings our neck down. That is so important in our riding. And so when I do the Warrior 2 with them, I really have them think about keeping the neck loose and just slowly moving it out, looking over the middle finger and really stretching that neck, not to hurt themselves, but to think about, okay, this right here, you're firm on the bottom, at ease on the top, Sthira-Sukha, this post right here, and turn your neck. This will keep you riding, right? This will keep you riding. You're doing balance, you're doing Sthira-Sukha, you're stretching your neck, you're getting your focus, all the chakras are firing like crazy. I mean, it's an incredible thing. And so it just kind of came to me, I guess. I started thinking about motorcycling and the parallels to yoga.
Yeah, that's amazing. I feel like I don't ride motorcycles, so obviously I would never have thought that before, but Yeah, I mean, something as simple as like being able to turn your neck without pain or with ease so that you're able to constantly be aware of your surroundings and make safe turns is, I mean, so important.
Oh yeah, it's unbelievable. And I started thinking too about, like on the bike, we have this thing called T-clocks. It's a pre-ride check. You're supposed to come in and check your tires, your cables, your lights, your electronics, your oil, fluid, chassis, stands, all this stuff called T-clocks. It's an acronym to help us remember. And so I taught that. I started thinking more and more about the pre-ride check. Well, then I started thinking, wow, man, when we check into the yoga mat, we cross the threshold of the studio, we get down on our knees or we lay down, we're kind of preparing ourselves, setting our intention, or better yet, our sankalpa, our solemn vow. Man, it's the same thing. We're preparing ourselves for the moment. Hamlet said the readiness is all. He's getting ready for the duel with Laertes, right? The readiness is all. The readiness is all. You got to be ready to do the yoga. You got to be ready to do the motorcycle ride, both in safety. And so you check in. Maybe you're not checking your tires and wheels and cables like in motorcycle riding, but your mat, you're checking, okay, how's my back? Where's my mentality? Am I still stuck in the car? Where am I? Am I still stuck in traffic? So, I try to incorporate that too in terms of, okay, we check the bikes before we go. Check yourself now. Where are you? Are you here now? And, talk like that.
Yeah, I think that's really important because you hear, stories of car accidents and like these awful things that happen on the road. And it's often like, what was happening? And the person's like, I don't know. Like I was just not paying attention or I was totally checked out. And I think that being present when you're operating any type of vehicle is really, really important. And that's definitely something that can carry over from a yoga practice.
Yeah, really good point. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you got this idea, you saw the parallels, and then did you approach the Harley Davidson store in your town to see if they would be open to, hosting these classes with you teaching?
Exactly. I had gotten to know the people a little bit over the previous year that I've been here in Arizona now. And so I knew the people some, but not real well. I mean, I was a customer. And one day I started asking around, well, who's the event coordinator here? And I found out her name is Brina. So I went to Brina and I said, Brina, I've got this idea, and here's where it comes from. And I kind of broke down what I'm talking about with you, but in basic kind of language and how it might help, how yoga might help motorcycle riders, and why. And I said, hey, I'm willing to do this here. What do you think? And to my relief and my surprise, she jumped on it. Said, yeah, man, I used to do yoga. I don't anymore. How many times have we heard that, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. She said, yeah, let's do it. And I said, really? She said, yeah. And it was as simple as that. I just had to find the right person.
Yeah, that's amazing. I feel like it's a really good lesson in like, I think that sometimes we get these ideas and we're like, I think this is a good idea, but we maybe get like nervous to go find the right person to talk to, or nervous about the networking part, or I'm maybe nervous about rejection. And I feel like, just going in and having a conversation and getting to know people and then just saying, I have this idea. Can we work together on it? Even if they say no, I mean, at least you've put it out there and you know that it's a no, as opposed to like having the idea percolate and never doing anything about it.
Yes, exactly. And I've done some research to see if there are any other places in the U.S. I don't know about Canada, but in the U.S. where they're actually doing yoga in the dealership. And the only one I saw was, weirdly enough, very close to me here in Scottsdale. But I think they had a teacher just come in once in a while. It's not a regular thing. And I don't even know for sure if it was in the dealership. It just kind of said yoga for the riders. But I think it might have been held at another place. In any case, we hold ours in the dealership. And there is one day we did photos and we used the bikes actually as props, like, for Warrior 3, extending the hands, maybe put your hands on top of the leather seat just because you can't quite hold it very long or something like that. Mm-hmm. We use these beautiful, brand new, shining 2018 motorcycles as our background and props. It was very cool. And then where we actually hold the class, the dealership has a second floor outdoor porch deck. It's open air, and it looks out toward the mountains in every direction. So we're up there, warm breeze blowing. You're looking to the mountains in the distance, and underneath you, you've got Harley Davidson motorcycles just roaring up a storm. And the people, actually love it. It puts them at ease. It makes them feel at home. It's their environment. It's their casa, their dwelling. It's where they feel comfortable. So there are times when I have to stop from giving directions or saying anything because nobody could hear me. And there are motorcycles roaring underneath, and some of them are, really really open the throat on the throttle, we call it, opening the throat. And they really let it run. These things are so loud, you can't possibly say anything. So we just take a break for a second and smile.
Yeah.
And I actually do smile because usually the other people are smiling too. It's quite the incredible scene.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I feel like, too, you brought up something that's a really good point. Like, this is where these people who are coming feel comfortable. So I feel like there might be a couple people listening who are like, practicing with the sounds of like motorcycle engines. Like, that doesn't sound very peaceful. But I think it's like,
right.
Putting yourself in the perspective of, somebody who's maybe never done yoga before, has never really felt like good in their bodies, is really excited about riding motorcycles, but is not so like into like coming into a yoga studio where there's, everyone's in stretchy pants and there's incense and that sort of thing. Not that that's not great, but I think it's just finding a setting where somebody already feels comfortable when they're doing something that's new to them.
Very much so. And it's going back to my earlier point. It's not about me, it's about them. And so some of them even show up in regular street pants, blue jeans. Well, I'm not going to do any kind of comment or correction. In fact, one day I went with my blue jeans just to make people feel a little bit more comfortable. Some of them can't bend. Others have come in. I had a woman show up 2 weeks ago. This is an incredible story. Very badly injured twice in accidents, broke her neck, broke her back, and when she was 11 in a rodeo, was severely injured by a horse, got locked inside a rodeo box, inside the box with the horse, and it started kicking because somebody had shocked it and, injured her. So she was very, very badly injured 3 times. And when she read about this yoga and leather, yoga for bikers, she was ecstatic because she said, man, after my 3rd accident, when I broke my back, they thought I would never walk again. They thought I was a Jane Doe for 3 days. They didn't even know if I would live. Certainly they told me I would be paralyzed. Well, I said, it's not going to happen to me. I came out of that. I did the rehab. I had been doing yoga, but I did it even more. And this has absolutely given me new life. I can ride again. And she said, when I saw this, I just about flipped out my 2 passions, yoga and motorcycling. I'm like, wow. So there's at least one person out there, one person. And when that happens, what a service and what an amazing gift that yoga will give her and give me for being able to hear this story and give your listeners for being able to hear. Yeah, man, it works for anyone. It can work for anyone. Yeah, definitely.
And so I guess just backing up a little bit, you talked to the event coordinator and she was like, okay, it's a go. What was the process of like actually marketing the programs and getting people to show up? Like, was it well received right away? What was that sort of like for you?
Well, it actually was, that part was actually pretty easy because the people at the Harley dealership were so open to the idea that immediately all the publicity went into their mechanism. And they have a newsletter, they have a calendar, they have a website, they make posters, they make little marketing table tent type things that you can pass out. And so we did that at there's a large bike night they have here the first Friday of every month at Mesa. I also put it on my Facebook account and a number of others. I have 10 or 11 different social media things I work with. Mm-hmm. And I've tried to use the paper to get some advertising. So far, they really haven't done that. I contacted you. I'm always alert and looking for media opportunities. And it was also word of mouth. People started talking about it. And before you know it, I had a call from, they want me to do a film on this, actually, from a company in Hamburg, Germany called YogaNect. It's a new startup that will be starting in a new company that will be starting in January. It's going to have, a pretty wide reach. And they were fascinated by this idea of yoga in a Harley Davidson dealership. You're kidding me. And then there's a Harley Davidson dealership in Hamburg, too, I found out. But the publicity was really the simple part. After our blast, and we kind of put it out there for people, the first class I had 7 people showed up, and I was astounded, because first time. Well, ever since then, this person's going that way and that person's going this way, and it's kind of dwindled a little bit. But every class I have, somebody new walks in. Last week, somebody new was there, and she said, "Hey, Greg, I've got to go back to Vancouver for a while, but I'll be back in January, and I'm coming back to your class." And I'm like, well, okay, cool. This is the way it is with a lot of people. They leave, they come, new people show up, other people have activities, and they're motorcycle riders, so on the weekends, you know what they like to do? They like to be out riding their motorcycle.
Yeah.
So, it's hard to keep hoping for huge groups because it's not going to happen. But I'm glad for anyone that's there, as in the case of the person with the broken backs, and in the case of a brand new guy yesterday that was mentioned before. He showed up in blue jeans. Never done yoga before.
That's amazing.
Oh, that's when it's fun.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just think it's really, really neat that you're able to attract these people who can hugely benefit from yoga, both physically and mentally. And you're able to, cultivate this space where they feel really comfortable and at home, and they can come and they can learn this new practice. I just think it's so amazing that you're able to do that and introduce yoga even to one more person a week. That's massive.
Thank you, Amanda. I really think it is too. I sure appreciate the summary you just gave there, and you're right. And one more thing about that. I was at Bhakti Fest in September out in California, and I went to a couple classes by a yogi that's quite well known around the world, really, Mark Whitwell. He's from New Zealand. I really liked his classes, and what he said to us over and over was, folks, make a promise to yourself and to me that you're going to go back to your communities, find your demographic, and teach yoga. Find your demographic. Find out who it is that, as you say, niche, who it is that is calling to you. And so I came back after that and after my training, and, my meditation was, basically, whom shall I serve? Who do I serve? And then the writer thing came into my mind, and that's what I'm doing, at least as long as I could do it.
Yeah.
Proving my father wrong,
It's like the lifelong, child part of us. We're consistently just proving our parents wrong.
Yeah, Dad, you see me now, Dad.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
You probably think I'm quite crazy.
I think though, it's really interesting. I think you touched on something with having the meditation and, finding your demographic. And I was just thinking about how, it would be one thing if, say, a Harley Davidson, not company, a Harley Davidson store wanted to host yoga for riders, and say they just brought in a yoga teacher like myself. I think that I am capable as a yoga teacher to come up with a sequence that would work for somebody who sits on a motorcycle constantly.
Oh, sure you would. Yeah, sure you would.
But I was on a motorcycle when I was little, and I was not driving it. I don't ride motorcycles. I don't really engage with motorcycle culture. It's not something that I do. So I think that having, that background and really understanding the culture and understanding what it's actually like to be on the motorcycle for, 5-6 hours, the things that you actually need to be able to move in your body. And what you were talking about in the beginning with the balance and being able to relax into the bike and stuff. I feel like that's a huge, huge advantage that would keep people coming back and keep people intrigued.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. I do try to follow up real specifically with yoga-related postures and how it works in motorcycling. For example, in the runner pose, it's a difficult pose because of the balance, but we learn in motorcycling that where your head goes, where your gaze goes, whether or not you try to do this, that is where your motorcycle is going to go. And sometimes I've noticed if I'm on the highway, and let's say I look to the right and I'm gazing at something in the distance, if I look a little bit too long and then put my gaze back to the horizon in front of me and look again, I realize, man, I've shifted over to the right quite a ways, even though I didn't think I was or I wasn't trying to. Well, that's how people get hurt. And then when I say, okay, take the runner pose. Now, let's say, for example, if your left leg is in front and your right leg is behind, take your right hand, put it forward, and then your left hand behind you, way behind you. Now, take your gaze slowly to the left as far back as you can comfortably do without straining your neck. Okay, here you are. You're practicing attentive motorcycling right there because you're aware that your gaze has a lot to do with your balance. You're aware as a motorcyclist that your gaze dictates where you go. And the balance itself is something that, man, you turn, your head turns, and you're balancing on the motorcycle. That's how you make a turn. We're practicing that in yoga. And I constantly remind them of the fact that where are you looking? Where is the gaze? Where is your gaze? What horizon are you looking at? Up, straight ahead, down. Where is your gaze? And thinking about where your gaze is also relates to your mentality.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
If you're stuck behind your third eye or just daydreaming, you're you're not there.
Yeah, definitely. And so, when you think about like the average cyclist and they're sitting on the bike for a number of hours, what other like poses do you tend to teach in these types of classes?
Well, things that would open up, things that would strengthen or open up hips and core, like chair, runner's lunge, warrior two. I would say cobra, and we're talking basic, hardly any adaptations or extensions of these basic poses. We're just talking slowly getting into the pose and maybe holding it for 5 seconds. That's a win for a lot of these folks.
Mm-hmm.
It's really a big win. Their demographic is such that they tend to be a little older, they tend to be a little overweight, a little out of shape, they tend to do a little drinking of alcohol, they tend to be kind of carefree. But now, all of a sudden, oh my God, here we are. Illness and age and motorcycling on the highway is hammering our bodies. Suddenly, I don't feel so good anymore. I don't have the endurance. My shoulders are tight. So, maybe arm extensions straight up, half moons, trying to open up the side body. Chair, I call that the sitting at the stoplight pose. You can't hold it very long. You ignore the drama in your legs. You try to keep your arms loose and relaxed. But you pay attention because there's traffic whizzing by all around you, right? You got to watch that light, and so your gaze is focused. But you're relaxing in that chair. And teaching these folks to relax in the midst of stress, that's yoga's therapeutic, and it's necessary for both safe riding and for effective yoga asana.
Yeah.
It's effective, so that's really the therapeutic I try to teach for shoulders, for hips, for back, for stomach. Well, heck, let me revise that statement. For everything. For the whole body. Because some of these people are pretty beat up, as I have been with injuries and in sports and in other things.
Yeah. And so I just want to kind of paint a picture of what the class looks like. And I know you kind of talked about where you actually hold it and, what the noise might be, what the scenery looks like. Do you teach like a flow type class, or is it very much like, we're going to work on, shoulders, hips, and legs today, and we're just going to do a couple poses that focus on each?
Yeah, that's a good question, Amanda, and it depends to a large degree who is there. For example, if I have 2 people or 3 people and they're beginners, I'm not going to worry too much about getting into a flow sequence, but just teaching some basic poses. And I even take one of the inserts out of this thing called the Yoga Toolbox for teachers and students. It's posture cards. And I might actually workshop 1 or 2 poses that we'll use a lot in a yoga sequence or in a yoga class. And so at the beginning, after our breathing and pranayama and getting settled, I might actually have them look at the card and look at the adaptations and lead them through workshopping and practicing for 5 to 10 minutes a cobra or a down dog or a runner lunge. Because we're talking basics here. We're talking people that are just experimenting and trying to get to the point where, gosh, maybe I can do this. And then if there are people there that have been around in the past, we just started in September, so it's really the third month. And I'll learn a lot more as I go here. But if there are people that are more frequent, and I've had that a couple times, I might do some of the posturing individually, like I'm talking about now, but then maybe for the last 15 minutes, break into the flow, and then calm down with some more breathing, and then go into the savasana at the end. But yeah. I'm really trying to pitch it toward who's there, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I really like that idea because I think that, I totally understand. Like, we were all a beginner of yoga at one point. I think like I was quite young when I started yoga, and I also came from a dance background. So I feel like I was already flexible. I was already used to like cues involving my body. I already had quite a lot of body awareness. So I think for me, it was like a really natural transition. But as a teacher, I've seen so many different students, and you can see the ones where it's like they're learning how to use their bodies either for the first time or all over again in this way that's really different for them. And I think that being able to take that opportunity and, teach them some core poses and have them work through it at a slower pace where it's not just like inhale cobra, exhale downward dog. And they're like, what are we doing? What's a cobra? Creates a lot of safety for them. Like, it makes them feel a little bit more safe and comfortable in the class.
Yeah, exactly. If we tried that, if I walked in and tried that someday, nobody would know. Well, maybe a couple, but not many people would even know what's going on or be able to do that. So we're talking beginners, and I really love the beginners because it gives me a chance to start right from the start, right from the sutras. Mm-hmm. Be here now, man. Get here now. Get here now on your mat.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that it's like a pretty new program, but what's the type of feedback that you've got so far, from the community, from the people attending, from the people at the Harley Davidson location?
Everybody that I talk to, I don't know what they say behind my back. We can never know what they say when we're not there. And I don't worry about that anyway. But everybody I talk to is really enthused about it. They absolutely are. And in fact, I received an email from my agent just yesterday, and she's saying, Greg, think about how this is incredible. I love it. Think about how you might write something about this, yoga and bikers. I'm like, oh my God, man, I'm just working on my current text. That's a little ways down the road. I'm just starting this. But the point is that people are, they're enthused about it. They're excited about it. They're kind of ecstatic about it. And they smile like, what? You're kidding. Wow, that's great.
That's amazing.
Others may not like it, but, or think it's for, they might fall into the stereotypes, right? That yoga is only for skinny women, or that motorcycling is only for big men. No, there's a whole variety of people here in both camps. Both motorcyclists and yogis have been the subject of some incredible stereotypes. And they're similar in a way, like motorcycle riders are gangsters. Yogis are, Hindus or Hare Krishna or whatever. There are tremendous stereotypes about each group. And you know what? I found in both groups, this is why I like diversifying my friendship base. In both groups, they're just people. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what I found.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more. I actually have one of my good friends back in Canada. Her parents ride motorcycles, and her mom is this tiny, petite, beautiful little woman, and her parents are in their mid-50s, and her dad is involved with the church, and he's big in the community, and he writes for the local newspaper in the town we grew up in. And I was like, your parents ride a motorcycle? Like, what?
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, they love it. And like, they showed up one day when we were, me and her were hanging out, and they came to visit, and they showed up and they're, you know, all leather with their big Harley Davidson. And I was like, what? Like, this is not the type of people that I think about who ride motorcycles. But I love the idea of getting away from those stereotypes, because I also don't like the stereotype, like, oh, you have to be like skinny and vegetarian and wear mala beads to practice yoga.
Right.
So yeah, I love the fact that you're like bringing those two worlds together and doing it in a way that makes people feel really welcome in order to join.
Yeah, it seems like it. I mean, they're walking in, and I'm happy to be there and do that with them.
Yeah, I'm curious if you have any things that you've learned from creating like a super niche yoga program.
You know, it's so new right now, Amanda, at the third month we've been doing this, that I can't really draw specific conclusions about what I've learned regarding motorcyclists and yoga. Except that, I guess, it really isn't a conclusion, it's an observation. They're more open than I thought they would be, which is good. Mm-hmm. I mean, open to the idea. I guess I'll have to wait a little longer, Amanda, before I can really draw some conclusions and come up with some good statements there about what I've learned.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair.
Yeah, I'm kind of stuck right there.
No,
Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
Just throwing a question out there. There doesn't always have to be an answer. There's no right or wrong. There's just your experience. So, yeah, I think it's really interesting that you've been able to create something based on two things that you're passionate about. And I know that, you know, there's kind of been these different sort of forms of yoga, you might call them, sort of popping up over the last couple of years. Like, you know, goat yoga kind of became popular, and then people have integrated other types of animal yoga. So like, I know a girl who goes to the local SPCA, and they let the cats out and they do yoga there. And then there's been beer yoga that's popped up recently.
Well.
It's kind of interesting because I feel like I'm in a lot of like online yoga communities, and people always have their opinions about, you know, is this yoga? Is it how it should have been taught back in the day? Like, you know, would the creators of yoga be happy with this? Is this how we want yoga to be, you know, portrayed out into the world? And my thought around it has always been like, you know, as long as you're coming from a place as a teacher where you feel like you're offering something to people that you feel good about, and you're able to get people who would never normally step in a yoga studio, like, what's wrong with that? Because as teachers, like I feel like, at least for me personally, maybe I shouldn't speak for everyone, is like, I really just want people to be able to feel better physically and mentally. I want them to be able to connect with their bodies, with their minds. And if that involves, you know, a glass of wine at the end, or, you know, doing it outside of a yoga studio and in a Harley Davidson shop, like, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I mean, really, this land and your land, too, we're places of innovation, and always have been. And so we take a cultural inheritance from India, and we massage it, and we make it our own. That's what America does. That's what Canada does. That's what we've always done. And there's nothing wrong with the change in form. People are still being served. I agree with you. I'm not a purist that way. People are being served, man, by this incredible mind, physical, non-physical, and metaphysical medicine. What's wrong with that?
Totally. Like the idea of somebody who, you know, maybe can barely move their head to the right, and has an idea that a yoga studio is not a place for them, where they're welcome, or maybe they won't fit in, or they won't be able to keep up. You know, those people are doing yoga now because you're offering it to them, which is super cool.
Yeah. One of our taglines is, ride there, feel good, do the yoga, feel better, ride home, feel great. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, you know, I think we're trying, you know, maybe relating more to your last question, trying to find ways even more and more to speak the language. For example, Namaste Yoga at the Harley Davidson shop. People don't understand that as well as they understand oatmeal cookies. But if I say skull and bones yoga, or I say leather and yoga, or I say shining skull yoga, you know, the Kalabadi breathing, man, then we're talking skull and bones. Yeah, I'm there. So, this is part of that assimilation and cultural, not captivity, but cultural shift that we're talking about. And it serves people. That's the bottom line. It serves people.
Yeah. I think too, that comes around to what I was talking about earlier, where like, I feel like I'm qualified to teach like the physical aspects of yoga to, somebody who rides motorcycles, but I feel like being able to understand the culture allows you to relate to them in another way, like being able to look at, the English names of the poses and being like, okay, what relates to the culture? I can talk about this breathing exercise and they're going to be like, yeah, this is sweet. Like it's called that. That's cool. I'm into it.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
And we think about learning yoga or learning motorcycle riding. I mean, when we teach motorcycle riding, we teach about the friction zone in the clutch. We teach about the apex of curves. We teach about loading the bike for low gravity. These are baby steps that we take to teach a rider safely. Well, we do the same thing in yoga, and we can talk to them, about, okay, when you bend now, find your friction zone, just like you find it in that clutch. There you go. And then we're starting to make these correlations that if you have the language, it's pretty easy to do, but you don't ride a motorcycle, Amanda, maybe you don't know about the friction zone on the clutch, just one example.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about the friction zone on the clutch. But yeah, I think it's just another element that allows, them to feel comfortable. It's like you're speaking their language. You're not like talking Sanskrit terms at them, which you could, of course, I think add this layer of like them learning the yogic side of it, but it's kind of like speaking their language in a way that they understand. To get them feeling comfortable doing the poses.
Yes, exactly. And the other things that I try to do are very traditional and important, whether it's coming to your mat or the pranayama exercises. And man, one guy was there, the second session I had, physically, in some rough shape, has a hard time walking, even harder time biking. Well, just standing there and doing the breathing. He left going, wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. Why don't you come and talk to our Hog Chapter? Hog Chapter is a Harley Owners Group chapter, and each dealership in the country has one of these chapters, and people gather and they take rides together during the week. And these Hog Chapters, are pretty big across the country. So, boom, there we got an invite to speak about yoga to the Hog Chapter. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Mainly just because of some breathing exercises, for crying out loud. How amazing is that?
Yeah, definitely. I love that. So that kind of links to my next question. I was going to ask you, what are your goals with this program? Like, where do you want to see it in 6 months, a year, 5 years?
I hope people keep attending, first of all. I hope that I can keep doing push-ups and keep doing my chaturanga and keep teaching to prove my father wrong over and over again. And I hope people keep coming to the class, learning about yoga and improving their physical selves. And then it starts translating. I mean, this is out of my hands. But if it translates then to a mental and psychological component and a spiritual component for the folks that come, I'm thrilled for them. But my goal really, Amanda, is to keep being there, keep being the best teacher I can be, not because it's about me, but because I want to serve them to the best of my ability. And from that, after that, I have no control, obviously. I can't control anyone else's learning, anyone else's motivation, anyone else's feedback. I mean, I learned this very well in my teaching career. I listen to what they say, but I can't control that. What I can control, what I really work on, is my management of that 1 hour. Get one precious hour with these folks, make it count. Mm-hmm. So I want to keep doing that, and hopefully people keep coming, and more people keep coming, so I can, share this great healing practice with them. That's other goals. I really have not articulated them to myself, and I don't know if I will, at least for quite a while.
Yeah, that's cool. That makes sense.
Just live into it, yeah.
Yeah, just see how it goes and then, go from there.
Keep doing it. Yeah, keep doing it.
And so you mentioned that you were writing a book. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Yeah,
I did write after I started yoga in Hawaii, obviously everything started happening at such an intense level, mentally, physically, and I'm thinking, man, what's going on here? And I sat down one day, and I also taught writing in college, so I have an MA in English. I am a writer. I sat down one day and started writing about personal stuff, my family and other things, my growing up. And, I was just sweating it out day after day. And after about a year, I was done. My system was clean. I was done. And then I turned, almost unexpectedly, and started writing about yoga. That was 3 years and 9 months ago. And so I write articles, and I've published in 11 national and international yoga journals, magazines, blogs, 58 articles at this point. And then I put together a text. I wrote a book. And it was basically 30 vignettes of 750 to 1,500 words each, followed by a meditation. And the vignettes focused on various aspects of the yoga practice, and I called it Yoga Inspirationals. My agent pitched it for a year. We did not get any takers. We had interest, but no takers for publishing. And then, I thought, well, okay, give it some time now, go back to the drawing board. And now I'm redoing it with a new theme and with new learning, new maturity, new focus, and new input, and from a teacher's perspective as well as a student's perspective. I consider myself a devoted student and a dedicated teacher, and those are two different things. Devoted student, dedicated teacher.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds really interesting. I hope that it gets published at some point.
Thank you. Yeah, I do too. That would be that is a goal I have, which I'm working for it, but may or may not ever accomplish. But I'm doing the best I can do. That's all I can do.
Amazing. And so where can people go to find out, read your writing? Because you write quite a bit outside of your book as well, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, there are a number of journals. Elephant Journal, most people know about that, or here's some others. Yoga International, Yogi Times, doyoyoga.com, the Yoga Blog, Seattle Yoga News, the Health Orange, tribegrow.com, helloyoga.com, and Asana Journal. Asana Journal is out of India. It's a 2-language journal, and I really like that publication. It's both a magazine and a on-site. So any of those, .com, or they could possibly find some of my links, I think, at my website, just GregoryOrmson.com.
Amazing.
Or follow the hashtag MotorcyclingYogiG. They might come up with something there too.
Awesome. Are you on Instagram, Facebook, all those social media platforms?
All those things, about 10 different ones. Yes, everything, including Zing and Read It and Tumblr and Stumble Upon and all of that stuff.
Man, you're on more social media than I am.
Yeah, I know. And the Google bookmarks and blah blah blah, on and on.
Okay, LinkedIn. Amazing. Is there anything else that you want to share about, your career as a yoga practitioner, yoga teacher, and now teaching yoga and leather?
Well, I've been teaching in 3 different settings over the years, Amanda, and it's really interesting to me how each group thinks that their job is the totally hardest, the most misunderstood, something that nobody else understands or respects. And that may or may not be true, but it's so unimportant. We really need to understand it's not about us. It's not about us. It's about our calling, living our vocation. And with the purpose, if we are teaching with any other purposes in mind, we might as well get out of it. It's it's our calling, it's our purpose. It's not about us, man. And all these groups of teachers I've been a part of, they all think they have the worst deal, and there's a lot of complaining. Man, it's just time to stop that. It helps no one. It puts bad energy out there. And you know what? It's not true. It's not true at all. So that's the one thing I think may sound a little critical about teachers and about teaching. Not meant to be critical. It's meant to be it's meant to be honest and say, folks, take a good look at yourself. I mean, if we have food and we have shelter we're pretty wealthy in this world. Just be grateful for what you have and get out there and do your job, teach yoga, find your demographic, teach your yoga.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for your time today, Gregory. It's been really awesome chatting with you and getting to know more about your business and learning more about, yoga for motorcycle riders.
Thank you, Amanda.
All right, guys, I hope that you enjoyed that episode of the podcast. As always, you can find relevant links and photos and notes and all that good stuff up on the show notes at www.mbomyoga.com. You can also find access to the newsletter and upcoming offerings over at the website. You can find me on social media at Mastering the Business of Yoga on Facebook and Instagram. You can join the private Facebook community at Yoga Business Badasses. And you can send me an email if you have any questions, comments, or feedback at info@mbomyoga.com. If you enjoy this episode of the podcast, please hit subscribe and leave a review. It really helps so that other yoga teachers and yoga business badasses can find the podcast. As always, thank you so much for listening. Happy holidays and namaste.